Opiate dependency is extremely dangerous.
I thought I would just do it once and that would be it. I had never thought I would have an addiction problem in my life.
My biggest fears were her having to go on morphine and having to go to the NICU. And that is the last thing that I wanted. And I knew that if that was going to happen to her, that was completely my fault. That was completely because of the choices that I made and my inability to realize that I had a problem before I did, and that she would be stuck in there alone in a NICU for like 4 weeks. And that would be my fault. It was October 1st, 2010. We went to Ottawa for a friend's birthday party. We ended up having a couple drinks. I don't usually wear heels, so when we went out that night, I wore about a 2-inch heel. It was not a very big heel at all. The bar that we went to, the dance floor was kind of tiered, so when we were dancing, I kind of walked backwards and I fell off of it. I tried to catch myself from behind, and when it did, I broke my ulna in 3 places, my radius twice, and shattered my wrist. We went to the hospital right away. They told me that I'd broke my arm, and they just gave me 4 pills to take home with me. I didn't know what they were at the time. They just said to take 2 of them for the ride home to help with the pain. They were Percocets. Now I know that. And that's the first time that I've ever taken them.
Canada seems to be at the center of the opioid crisis. I don't think we'll see a decrease in the opioid epidemic, because it really is an epidemic. We have huge numbers of people in Canada now who are dependent. There probably won't be a decrease in it until we build up social systems and infrastructure that give people alternatives to leading painful lives. We are among the highest users of opioids, of prescription opioids in the world. That's partly a good thing. That's partly because we have universal health care and people have access to physicians, and many people have coverage for medication. Impoverished people can go to a doctor and get a prescription and have the prescription paid for, but they can't get membership at the Y paid for, or physiotherapy or massage therapy paid for. So really, we're a wealthy society which has this wonderful healthcare system, but then the only remedy we have for people is opioids.
I started the painkillers about 3 years ago. I have back pains. There's 2 different curves in my spine, and I have sciatica. And a friend of mine referred me to a pain specialist. And when I started seeing him, did some x-rays, and then put me on Percocet. It just made me feel like normal. Just that I could do my everyday activities without being in pain or thinking about the pain, which made it a lot easier.
My life revolved around either finding someone who could get me pills or finding money to get pills. That was the first thing I thought about when I woke up, and whether I'd have enough to get through a day. It controlled my day from the time I got up till, well, even I'd wake up in the night. So I guess it was always controlled my life.
Opioid dependence doesn't just make you addicted, it makes a whole other life for you. I had to relearn simple things like how to fold laundry without being on Percocets, how to go to work without being on Percocets, how to hold a conversation without being high. And it's hard. It's really hard. It completely changes the type of life that you have. I went to my family doctor to get a prescription renewed. And he said, well, you know, you've been on it for about 4 years now. Do you just want to try cutting the dose in half for a month, and then you should be good to go from there? So my prescription I took it faster than I should have. And so I was stuck for about like 2 weeks, and then I ended up finding people who had them who would just say, yeah, here you go, you know, like take some of them. When I went back to my doctors, we just cut the medication off from there. And that's when I went into withdrawal again.
I had some stolen from me once, so I ran out early, and that's it till your next prescription is made. Going through the first round of withdrawal was shocking for me.
You're vomiting and sweating and shaking and crying for no reason.
But I couldn't sleep. I had migraines, I felt hot, I felt cold, I felt nauseous, and they would come and go in waves, and it made it almost impossible to function.
Feels like you have the flu times 100. It's awful. I would never wish it on anyone.
I ended up caving and I took the pills, and you know, an hour later, all of it's gone. I've been that outsider looking in and saying, you know, how easy it is. Well, why don't you just stop, right? And it's not that simple. My whole life revolved around it, but it tore apart like everything that I had. You know, it eats away at everything. I was selling things I shouldn't have been selling. I was pawning off items in our home, and I was hiding it from everybody. I hid it from my whole family. Some of them still don't know about it. Like, I was taking my paycheck and going to the bank and withdrawing, you know, hundreds of dollars, and I didn't want to be doing it. I remember one time I went and I was crying while I was doing it because I didn't want to, but you're so deep in your withdrawal that you will do anything to get out of it. I started looking up treatment centers and treatment, like addiction specialists and stuff, and that's when I'd started on the Suboxone. It has done wonders. It's kind of brought me back to who I was in the beginning before all of this started.
Aww, baby. Aww, give baby a hug.
The withdrawal from opioids is uniquely dangerous to pregnant women and their babies. Pregnant women, it causes irritation and contraction of muscles all over, which gives the sort of jumpy legs feeling that a lot of addicts get when they're in withdrawal. Pregnant women will also get an irritated uterus that starts to contract, and that can possibly lead to preterm labor with all of the dangers that involves for a very premature baby. So in an infant suffering from severe withdrawal, that discomfort and instability of the nervous system can actually lead to seizures, and in some cases has been fatal. So the funny thing about opioids in pregnancy is that most of the damage that comes to opioid injection drug users comes from the fact that the opioids are made illegal. There's nothing that causes birth defects, for example. There's nothing that interferes with the function of the placenta or the health of a mother. So unlike caffeine and tobacco and alcohol and cocaine, which actually cause damage, cause cell damage, they interfere with the placental function, they can cause miscarriage and preterm labor, a safe, measured, regular dose of an opioid will do none of that.
When I found out I was pregnant, I was pretty shocked. Me and my husband, we weren't planning a pregnancy, but we weren't disappointed in a pregnancy by any means. We'd been together for 9 years at that point. The timing that happened with me was extremely lucky because I had just started the Suboxone program 4 weeks before I got pregnant, before I'd conceived.
When a woman goes from using illegal drugs on the street, which have contaminants and are injected and are used in dangerous ways, and she's given a safe, regular dose of a pure, medically produced pharmaceutical like methadone or buprenorphine, she's healthy. And most of the women that I see who are on opioid substitution in pregnancy have full-term pregnancies and deliver big, fat, healthy babies. The only problem is that once you cut the umbilical cord, the baby is cut off from its supply. So really, uniquely with opioids, the problem happens after they're born when they no longer get their opioid. A baby going through withdrawal will be irritable, crabby, will cry a lot, will be jittery, it'll have poor control of its motor functions, and it'll be shaking a lot. It will have trouble controlling its temperature, so its temperature will either be too warm or too cold. And it won't feed very well. It will feel nauseated, it won't feel like swallowing, and when it does swallow, it has a much greater tendency to vomit and to have diarrhea, so food doesn't stay in and it doesn't nourish the baby. So not only can it suffer from a seizure, but it will also it'll have failure to thrive, it won't be able to absorb nutrition, and it will starve to death if the withdrawal isn't interrupted. Our society has a huge desire to medicalize things. We medicalize the hell out of everything. There's a line, and we cross it sometimes, and we need to step back. It's not always a good thing to intervene and to do stuff just because we have the technology.
Previous to our rooming in program, the first time we would meet them would be when they presented in labor, and then following delivery, baby would be taken out of the room, separated from mom, put into the special care nursery and monitored there. Moms could come down and see their babies as frequently as they wanted, but typically we've seen a big difference in how often parents were even in the nursery. The environment is not as comfortable. So in the nursery environment, there's lights on 24/7. It's noisy. There's staff coming and going. There's multiple babies in one room, and monitors going off, and nurses doing activities, which is very loud.
And if they're in an isolette, you can't just pick them up. It makes you feel like you're not the mother, or I guess the father, and either way it just makes you feel like you're just somebody there looking at a baby, and that's not even yours.
What are you doing? Look at you.
Abrahams and his team found that if they leave the babies with the mothers and let the mothers comfort the babies continually and keep the baby in contact with its mother, they rarely had to start morphine on those babies.
When they're experiencing neonatal abstinence, there's a lot happening. Their brain is overworked, it's firing fast. When babies room in with their moms, they're in private rooms where we can modify the environment. We can pull the curtains, pull the blinds, we can have decreased lighting, we can have decreased noise. There's less people coming in and out.
The nurses are there if you need them, but you're the one that's looking after the baby, and you can hold her, and you're the one changing her, and you're not constantly being watched by somebody. It's a big change. It's great.
One of the most wonderful things for all babies, and especially for this population, is skin to skin. So baby just in a diaper, skin to skin with mom or the support person, and that is so soothing.
The power of human contact is nowhere as important as in the mother and child bond right after birth. Just before Kingston General Hospital switched from immediately putting opioid-dependent babies into the NICU, 80% of those babies would experience severe enough withdrawal that they had to be started on morphine. Immediately upon introducing rooming in, that number dropped, the number of babies requiring morphine dropped to 20%. I can't remember the last baby who needed to be switched down to NICU and given morphine.
I was so worried about being judged that knowing that when I went in there, everybody knew why I was staying for 5 days.
There's a lot of stigma around substance use, especially during pregnancy. They are concerned that they're going to be judged, and they feel guilty. They feel immense guilt. Part of what we do is try to alleviate some of that fear, that we're not here to judge them. We're here to work with them and provide the best care for them and for their babies.
It definitely helps your confidence level because you're doing it yourself and that's your child, so you are primarily in charge of taking care of your child, so it makes you feel like a mother this time, not like somebody that's just there to look at a baby.
I got a lot of support. All of the nurses that came in, they were tremendously supportive. They had answered any questions that I had. Everything went great, and I got to leave the morning of day 5.
Now you want to keep them on? You can keep your shoes on? You can take them off if you want.
So the really wonderful thing about rooming in is that it has allowed mothers who are on methadone or buprenorphine to feel like normal, competent mothers. And because in fact they are. The person who is most able to comfort a baby is its mother. Seeing that baby come to her and in her arms settle down when it's been screeching and crying, I think is enormously confidence inspiring, and especially in the case of women who have experienced trauma and who have experienced loss and who may have had difficult and turbulent childhoods themselves. Addicts are told that they're bad, wicked, lazy, selfish, inconsiderate people who are just engaging in a fun habit without caring about the effects that it has on other people, which is not the case. That's not what addiction is. Addiction is a loss of choice, and it's terribly frightening and disempowering just to be an addict. To also have the police, the courts, doctors, nurses, the emergency room, psychologists tell you that you're also a bad person and lazy and should just pull up your socks and stop makes you feel also like an idiot, like a worthless idiot, because you can't help yourself. So being in the hospital and being told, we understand you have a medical condition, it's called addiction, you can't help it, your baby is going to need special care after, and we're here to make sure that the baby gets the special care. I think that's amazingly empowering. It doesn't take any special training to let babies room in with their mothers. It takes less staff, it takes less technology, it takes less hospital space for less time, and the babies do better. So this is a program which is easier to do, cheaper, and has better effects. There's no reason not to do it. It's only inertia and laziness that would make a hospital continue to routinely separate an opioid-dependent baby from its mother and put it in the NICU under the mistaken belief that somehow that's going to be good care for the baby. It will not be good care. The baby will experience more severe withdrawal because it's been separated from its mother. It will require morphine. It will stay in the hospital for several weeks. If those hospitals really are concerned about diminishing healthcare budgets, they should leave the baby with its mother, give her a private room. She'll be out of there with her baby in 5 days, and everybody will be better off.
Yeah, your peekaboo book?
Can't be happier. It makes me feel so good that I was able to keep her healthy in the first place, and then show her everything, see how she thrives and just grows.
I want to find my life.
Having her has changed literally every single part of my life.
They're all meeting their milestones. They're all active and smart. You wouldn't even know they were born on methadone. They're just like any other baby, any other kid.